Hi guys, this is gsno.com and I'm here with the review of the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 5G. Just having reviewed the Redmi Note 10s, we're pretty familiar to the model derived from the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So what we're dealing with here is a cheap 5G handset, as the name shows, Redmi Note 10 5G. It's got a triple camera at the back side, it's got a good looking back, and the price is only $200 in most countries. Aside from that, it has a pretty generous battery, so some people may view it as a sort of battery phone. And also a 90Hz screen, which could be used for gaming. Plus, it comes in hues like chrome silver, graphite gray, nighttime blue, and I think it's time to discuss the design. First of all, it's all plastic here, plastic at the back, plastic for the frame, and at the front there's a bit of glass with Gorilla Glass 3 protection. It measures 8.9mm in thickness and weighs 190 grams. It's got a 6.5-inch diagonal, a punch hole here for the selfie camera, and I should probably also mention that it comes from the factory with a pre-applied screen protection. Now, aside from this, it's pretty easy to handle, so the grip is fine, the back doesn't draw too many fingerprints or lint. It actually feels a bit like the lunar silver of the Xiaomi Mi 10T Pro from last year and catches the light in a pretty fashionable manner. The camera here feels just slightly like the Xiaomi Mi 11 with its dual tone approach, and that's about it. The buttons are pretty comfy. We have them here on this side, flat power button with a fingerprint scanner and volume buttons. Everything checks out. Well, maybe except for the thick bezels and also the rather thick chin we have here. We also have a flat screen, which is prone for gaming, and a solid build. Now, as far as the actual screen is concerned, it's an IPS LCD, Full HD+, 6.5-inch, 90Hz, and let's actually start playing a video so you can get the proper idea of what's happening here. Okay, so this is what video playback looks like on the full screen. As you can see, the punch hole is quite big and a bit lower than we would have liked it to be. Now, even though in front of the camera here things look fine, this is definitely not a bright screen, and it has a modest set of view angles in both horizontal or vertical fashion. If you tilt it a bit, you're going to lose the clarity and the vivacity of the color. So that's that. I should also mention that it cannot face the sun very well. If you go out on a sunny day, you won't see many things on the screen on account of the poor contrast. The pixels have an RGB stripes arrangement, and when it comes to the test we did for the brightness, I'm talking about the lux meter, let's see what we achieved here. So a very modest result, 238 lux units. It's almost at the bottom of our hierarchy. This means that it beats the Moto G50 by some miracle, and the old Xperia E4, it gets beaten by 421 other phones I've tested, including the Realme 8 5G by 100 lux and the Redmi Note 90, which is also a cheap 5G phone. Definitely not an impressive result. If you want to perform some tweaks, we have the settings app and the display section. You can set it to light mode or dark mode, change the brightness, you have a reading mode, you have the color scheme, auto, saturated or standard, and we also have the refresh rate, which can be set to 90 or 60 Hz. It's supposed to help you with gaming, but more brightness would have been more helpful. Aside from that, I think it's time to discuss the CPU, and we go here to this app. It only shows the cores we have. Let's see if we have more luck with IDA. It's a MediaTek Dimensity 705G 7nm CPU octa-core. We've seen it on the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G, Realme 8 5G, and the Poco M3 Pro, of course, 5G. Aside from this, we also get here 4 gigs of RAM, as well as 120 GB of storage, UFS 2.2, and microSD. There's no lag per se, except for the moment you have more apps open in the background, which are updating, but even then, it doesn't suffer from any serious amount of lag, and you should be gaming without a problem in about, let's say, 80%, 85% of the apps and games in the Play Store. As far as the benchmarks are concerned, you also have here in our sister sites database, we start off with Antutu 8, where we surpassed the Moto G50 and Galaxy A71 plus the Galaxy A32 5G, so we're a pretty select company. We scored below the Moto G9 Plus and the Redmi Note 90. As you can notice, I'm constantly name dropping cheap 5G phones. Geekbench 5 with a multi-core subtest, just above the Redmi Note 10s, Nokia X20 5G, and Galaxy A72 4G. By the way, we also surpassed the Moto G50 and scored below the Realme 8 5G and the Poco X3 NFC. I should probably also mention that 3D Mark and GFX Bench wouldn't run, so we don't have much of a clue about the GPU here, but you have other tests which confirm once again that this CPU is pretty solid when you're comparing it to other $200 phones, but not past it. At most you can fight a $250, maybe a $300 phone, but that's a pretty rare occurrence. Anyway, this 7nm CPU, I would say, delivers strictly for the price. It doesn't overheat. 32.4 degrees Celsius we achieved in benchmarks, and in games 35.1 degrees Celsius, so definitely there is no overheating here. When it comes to the battery, we have a 5000 mAh unit, and let's see how it did. Now, at first sight, I would be impressed by this 15 hours and 35 minutes of video playback, but I've seen better from Xiaomi. It's better than the Redmi Note 9T and the Poco M3 Pro 5G, but it's below the biggest rivals Realme 8 5G, Moto G50 and Galaxy A32 5G, so there is that. Still, it's a good result, but once again, I've seen better. This is actually more impressive, the continuous usage, 11 hours and 59 minutes, basically 12 hours almost. It beats the Poco M3 Pro 5G and Oppo Reno 4 Pro 5G and the Huawei P40 Lite 5G. It stays below all the other rivals I mentioned, Galaxy A32 5G, Moto G50, Realme 8 5G, so expect it slightly better. The full charge is kind of long, 2 hours and 15 minutes, and after 30 minutes you're at just 20%. 1 hour gives you enough juice for, let's see, 54% is reached after 1 hour of charge. There's also the typical options. I'm talking about battery saver and ultra battery saver, which came with MIUI 12. We're done with the battery. I mean, it's pretty okay and all, but expect it slightly better from the Xiaomi phone. On the acoustic front, we have an audio jack at the top and a singular speaker at the bottom. It's placed here and you will not cover it in landscape mode. Definitely, there's enough room for them. There are also some extra settings in the settings app, stuff like presets, smart music, video or voice, and I think it's time to fire up some tunes. Okay, so a bunch of conclusion. Not much volume here. The high notes are fine. There's not much bass happening. The voice is pretty well rendered. That's pretty much it. The sides of the phone will vibrate quite a bit. And it sounds a bit hollow. That's the vibe I'm getting. The sound is a bit dirty. It's not very clear. And it feels much less loud if you turn it down by 10 or 20%. So definitely not very impressive unless you want just high notes and voice. That's what you're definitely getting here. We measured the power of the volume with a decibel meter and achieved 82.5 decibels at the bottom with a typical acoustic sample, while surpassing Poco M3, Realme GT 5G and the Poco X3 Pro. We stayed below the Realme 8 5G and the Galaxy A32 5G. And when you're running games, it's only 93.7 decibels, which is very underwhelming. We usually get 100 decibels here. We may have beaten the Xperia 10 Mark II, but definitely not beating the Moto G50, Realme 8 5G. I keep repeating those names because all these phones compete around the $200 mark. When it comes to the camera setup, I'm sure you've seen this before, and if you're asking me why, it's the same camera setup as the one from the Poco M3. At the front there's an 8 megapixel camera in this cutout here with Full HD filming, while at the back side the triple camera with a dual LED flash. The triple back camera has a 48 megapixel shooter with face detection autofocus and an OmniVision sensor, which is not flattering. And these two are 2 megapixel shooters, bokeh and macro. You can only film in Full HD. You have modes like short video, panorama, time-lapse, slow motion, portrait, night and photo. And also pro, there's a pro mode for photo and a pro mode for video, which actually is a bit shocking in the best way possible for me. Okay, so I think it's time to find the gallery and show you some of the shots I have taken. The comparisons with Poco M3 will be inevitable. They have the exact same camera setup. And I would also make some comparisons with the Realme 8 5G, which also has 48 megapixel plus 2 plus 2. That one has a Samsung ISOCELL sensor and this one OmniVision, and to be honest, I'm not very impressed. There's a lot of light here. Everything is imbued with light, with white. There's a white layer on everything. There's overexposure. The zoom is definitely underwhelming, but you should always remember that we're working with a $200 phone. Now, say what you will about overexposure and the bright light, but at least the green of the vegetation isn't exaggerately intense, so at least that. The exposure may be high, but the green isn't overblown. One thing that's good here is the way that we use the portrait mode here to cut this object from its background. Some cameras would have made this clear. This one detected a situation and properly made the separation. Pretty good close-ups and pretty nice texture here for the sand. Let's see other things we have here, some toys. I like the way the light is reflected on these objects. Man-made objects from plastic and other materials will be well represented. And if not, if the exposure is too high, you can definitely apply the HDR and save yourself some pain. It will definitely be working. Okay, we also have selfies here. Not pretty impressed at first sight. There was also some beautification going on. But later, in the later part of the gallery, I'm actually impressed by the eyes. They're pretty expressive. They really tell you the feeling of the person that's being photographed, and the bokeh is able to properly cut me from the background, and actually the bokeh is the best part of this 8 megapixel camera. Among the 8 megapixel cameras I've tested, this is one of the good ones, and you can even take some shots which are good enough to post on social media, which I didn't expect. Several close-ups which I consider much better than the macros, so avoid macros and take close-ups like this. With a bit of patience, you should be fine. When the sun went into the clouds, the colors got more satisfying. That's why these photos are actually pretty good. But you can also mess about with the exposure from dedicated settings. Several attempts at macros with the 2 megapixel camera. I mean, it delivers, but there's a lot of noise. It's a 2 megapixel shooter after all. And these are actually better results of close-ups and macros with a bit of vegetation on a statue. This is moss, if I'm not mistaken. So all in all, I am surprised by the selfie camera. This would be pretty much it, and the close-ups with the main camera plus the bokehs. That's all that remains here, but the exposure is definitely messed up. I would say it's a bump up by 10% from the Poco M3 and something like 10% or 15 minus from the Realme 8 5G. Now let's talk about nighttime capture. Now let's see a couple of night shots that we took with this handset, and I'll be honest, I'm very surprised by the results achieved here. Didn't see this coming, especially from a phone which is priced at $200, maybe less. Particularly the night mode is impressive, so regular shot, and if you want to read what it says here, you're definitely using the night mode and reading everything pretty clearly. It's not a rare occurrence. There are quite a few pictures which may get the vote to be posted on social media, and in case you're not happy with an image, night mode fixes everything, and even the colors are okay. Some bits will look cartoonish, like the plants for example, but in general things are above average here and above expectations when it comes to the capture. I'm talking about the colors, clarity, details, the size of the lights. Even the moon was well represented here, which is a bit of a shocker. And focus is also fine, and then we have those shots here which were nicely done. And night mode is the star of the show. I would say that nighttime photos are even better looking than the daytime ones on account of not having problems with overexposure anymore. When it comes to the video, let's show you some of the clips we have here. So let's go local to the camera. We have quite a few of them. Let's see the most relevant ones. First of all, there's no 4K, there's just Full HD. There is not even Full HD at 60 frames, just 30 frames. Let's start off with this focus test. So focus on an object in the foreground and then focus on the background, which works fine. As you can see, we're alternating between the two and the focus is spot on, it's pretty fast and accurate. So this test is being passed. Next up, we have the stabilization test. We're walking on a flat surface, and I would say it's above average again. It's electronic stabilization or something like it, definitely not optical. And still, I'm not seeing much flicker, so that's a compliment. And we did one more, this time descending stairs, and I keep being impressed. Not bad overall. Now, since it's Full HD, it obviously doesn't have a lot of details, and I should probably also mention that the vegetation and the sky are too well lit and too exposed. Let's see some other captures here. This one has more colors. The camera captures quite a bit of light, one would say too much light. The stabilization is also okay in panning. But overall, I feel that the overexposure is present, and you're definitely not seeing this here on this not very bright screen. You're probably going to see it on a monitor. We have a selfie video as well, which is actually not that bad, but the face traits aren't very well represented. I mean, there's a lot of noise. If you really view this on a screen, on a monitor, on a TV set, you're losing details for sure. And the face is too white, too ghostly to be realistic, but the stabilization was good once again. So those were daytime videos. I would call them okay for a Full HD filming camera, but average in general, above Poco M3 for sure. This is the nighttime video. I mean, it's okay if you're static. If you start to walk around, you're going to notice some flicker, some warmer colors, a lot of noise, and that's that. The image is pretty shaky and becomes gray pretty fast. Okay, so we had enough with the cameras, and I think it's time to address connectivity. This phone provides you with an USB-C 2.0 port at the bottom. It has an infrared emitter at the top side here, so you can control your TV set and air conditioner and more. And we find extra options here. When it comes to Wi-Fi, it's Wi-Fi dual band, as you probably guessed. We have dual SIM, nano SIM card slots inside. There's 4G and 5G connectivity. There's Wi-Fi Direct. We have Bluetooth 5.1 here, GPS and AGPS, GLONASS, Galileo and BDS, plus NFC for your payment needs. And the calls, I would say they were reasonably loud and pretty clear, but not above any other mid-range phone on the market. Now, when it comes to the speed test, we also did that, so let's check it out. We're going to have to go to another section here, to the screenshots, and guess what, we even caught some 5G, as you can see here. So on 5G we went up to 379 megapsecond downloads and a modest 27 megapsecond uploads. It's still not yet fully rolled out, but things are looking up for a $200 phone. It's actually pretty close or higher than what we achieved on Wi-Fi, 336 megapsecond downloads and 352 megapsecond uploads. The star of the show remains this result here, and I'm pretty impressed to see a cheap phone doing that. When it comes to the software, you have come to know what to expect from MIUI 12. I mean, Xiaomi is offering this dual column approach, which you can see here, and you can close app with a swipe to the side. We have the cleaner, security clean, deep clean, and manage app plus floating windows, which can go above your split screen apps. For security, we have face unlock or this fingerprint scanner here. So with this finger it doesn't work, with this one it does, and it's pretty fast to unlock your device. We have the Google News area on the leftmost home screen, and as usual you can do the drop down thingy and see your notifications and quick settings, or you can split them and have the quick settings in a control center activated with a swipe down from the right side, while the notifications are placed here on the left side. You can replace the buttons at the bottom with gestures, swipes, and as you can see, apps are split into, well, categories: communication, entertainment, photography, tools, news and reading, shopping, and games. Those are the categories you're going to be using. For other info, we have the settings area, which includes connectivity option, lock screen, notifications, home screen, privacy protection. The metadata of your photos is removed when sharing stuff via Mi Share. There's also digital well-being and parental control. You have quick ball and clear speaker plus button shortcuts, and the special features include Game Turbo for your gamers, floating windows, and a light mode. Now the pre-installed apps, there aren't many of them. There are a few games which you should be able to get rid of. There's Booking.com from what I can see. There's Facebook and a file manager. There's a gallery app and a proprietary Mi Video and Music app, Mi Remote to control stuff from the distance, and Notes as your note-taking application. Plus the most useful of them is the Security Hub. It's not an app, it's a hub. It's got a cleaner, a security virus scanner, a battery section, boost speed, manage apps, deep clean, Facebook cleaner, and you can even test the network and handle your block list. This is MIUI 12 in a nutshell on top of Android 11, and now I think it's time for the verdict. But before that, I should probably mention that we also have a dark mode available here, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so pros and cons for this handset as we start to open up our website. On the pro side, it's got a good looking back, for sure. It's a comfy handset with an okay performance on account of the CPU, which is not half bad. The battery life is pretty good. I found the high notes and the voice well rendered by the speaker at the bottom. Connectivity was fast, we even caught some 5G. Stabilization was pretty solid for a phone of this price tag when filming. There's also a good amount of bokeh which we captured here, and I'm loving the way the bokeh looked on both the front and the back camera. Then there are the close-ups with the main camera, which are good looking. Nice selfies, surprising night mode, I would say it's the standout. MIUI 12 is a plus, and that's about it. Now on the cons, this is a pretty poor display when it comes to brightness, for sure. The charging is a bit long, we don't have IP certification, we don't have stereo speakers. Sadly, we also do not have 4K video capture, and the bottom speaker doesn't have much volume. The macro capture isn't impressive, and I should probably also mention that the filming doesn't have much details. Now in the end, you probably already know the phones which are fighting in the same segment. I'm talking about the following. So we got the Redmi Note 10 5G fighting the Poco M3 Pro 5G, fighting the Motorola Moto G50 and the Realme 8 5G. How to choose one between them? It's easy. Look at the battery and the main camera sensor. All four of them have pretty similar specs, and you're going to have to choose for the battery and camera sensor. Otherwise, the CPU is similar, the RAM is similar, the screen is similarly poor on all four of them. You have to believe me. And, well, the choice is yours. This one is a pretty basic phone for $200, and the purpose for buying it are to take solid bokeh selfies, decent looking nighttime shots, and at the same time I would say that the battery is sufficient for some indoor video watching, and well, that's about it. I find that the Realme 8 5G is a better proposal when it comes to the camera and when it comes to the battery, if you really want a comparison. Meanwhile, it can equally fight the Moto G50, and we're still testing the Poco M3 Pro 5G. So this is it in a nutshell. Buy it for the bokeh selfies, buy it for the battery life, and performance isn't bad, and of course 5G is an argument. That's it from us. Bye bye.